How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Yud, Daf 110 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends, another great Daf of BavaMetzia. Here we go. I'm going to start on Daf Kuf Yud, Amud Aleph, 4 lines into the Daf. Ha'ushtara dehavo ksiv bei shnin stome mava omer sholish love omer shtayim. What a scenario. The scenario is that a mashkanta desura that came up yesterday, and it's come up I think recently also, but then of course from Ezu Neshech. Shimon lends $1,000 to Ruvain. Ruvain gives Shimon his field to use for a certain amount of time, and when Shimon returns the field to Reuven at the end of that time, the loan is they're even. The loan is considered paid. So here's the thing: Reuven writes a document to Shimon that Shimon can use his field, but they didn't write for how long. So now Shimon's saying it was for 3 years. I can eat the fruits for 3 years. Reuven says, no, what are you talking about? It's for 2 years. And 2 years are up. And he says, give it back, done. We're even. Give me back the field. Shimon goes and he eats the fruits. Now what? So again, I will start it. So there was a mashkanta desura. Da'avaksiv bei shnin stama. It just said, a certain amount of years. It just said years. It didn't say how many. Malve Omar Sholish. Shimon says it was a 3-year mashkanta. Love Omar Shtayim. Reuven says no, it was a 2-year mashkanta. 2 years is up. V'kodim malve v'ochlinu lefere. And Shimon goes and eats the fruits. So now what? Mi ne'eman. Who is believed? Do we believe Reuven, that it was a 2-year mashkanta and Shimon needs to reimburse him? Or do we believe Shimon, that it was a 3-year mashkanta and he was within his rights? Rav Yehuda Amar Karka b'chezkas ba'leo kaimo. Rav Yehuda says, well, the property belongs, it's owned by Reuven, so therefore the chazaka is with him, and therefore we side with him that it's a 2-year mashkanta and Shimon has to reimburse Reuven. Rav Kahana Amar Peiris b'chezkas ochlein kaime. Rav Kahana says, look, Shimon already ate the fruits. The chazaka is with him. He has the fruits. If Reuven wants to, extract a reimbursement, he has to bring some kind of a proof. Otherwise, Shimon keeps them. Vilsa kavosid to Rav Kahana, and the halacha is like Rav Kahana that Shimon keeps the fruits, and Reuven would have to bring some kind of proof, witnesses or whatever. The Amar Peres b'chezkas ochlein that Rav Kahana says that the fruits stick with Shimon. V'ho kaimelon deilsa kavosid Rav Nachman. But in general, we hold that the halacha is like Rav Nachman when it comes to mominus, when it comes to dinei mominus. V'Amar karka b'chezkas ba'leo omedes. Rav Nachman had said the other day, Amotaf, Kuf Beis Amud Beis, so about a week ago, there was a machloikes when it comes to Shimon rents out his property to his house to Reuven for 12 golden dinars for the year, 1 golden dinar per month, turns out to be a leap year. So what's the deal with the 13th month? Rav Nachman had said that karka b'chezkas ba'lea omedes, that the chazaka is with Shimon, and therefore Reuven would have to pay Shimon for the 13th month. So we see that according to Rav Nachman, the chazaka is with the one who owns the land, which in this case would be Reuven, which sounds like Rav Yehuda, who says karka b'chezkas ba'lea kaima, and therefore we assume that it's a 2-year mashkanta, and Shimon would have to pay Ruvain for the fruits. So Rav Yehuda had said that the chazaka is with Ruvain. Rav Kahana had said that Shimon can keep the fruits. We say that the halacha is like Rav Kahana, that Shimon keeps the fruits. But what's confusing about that is that in general we say that the halacha is like Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman's opinion is that the karka b'chezka is by le'om. This is just like Rav Yehuda, not like Rav Kahana. Hasa milsa de la avida le'igluye hi. There's a big difference between the case on Daf Kuf Beis Amud Beis with Shimon renting his house to Reuven, and he says 12 golden dinars for the year, 1 golden dinar per month, and then it turns out to be a leap year. The thing is that over there was a question of, do we go Tvos Lashon Rishon, Tvos Lashon Achron? Do we go based on what he said first, which is 12 golden dinars for the year? Do we go based on what he said second, which is 1 golden dinar per month? We don't know. There's no way to prove it. There's nothing to prove here. We know what he said. He said 12 golden dinars for the year, 1 golden dinar per month. That's not in question. We know what he said. The question is, what do we make of that? That's the question. What do we make? Tvos Lashon Rishon, Tvos Lashon Achron. Rav Nachman says, in that case, we go based on the chazaka of the Baal HaKarka, the one who owns the property. And that's how we deal with it. There's not going to be any witnesses that are going to come and bring new evidence. I mean, we know exactly what happened. He said 2 things, but we don't know which one to go by. We say, go based on the one who has the chazaka of the property. That's not the case here. There can be new evidence brought. Shimon says it's a 3-year mashkanta. Reuven says it's a 2-year mashkanta. If one of them could bring witnesses to prove their case, so finished. So because this is a case that's provable, so we're not going to say, okay, Shimon needs to pay back Reuven because Reuven owns the property, and then it turns out that Shimon brings witnesses that he was actually telling the truth, that it was a 3-year mashkanta, and now we're going to have to say, okay, Reuven, pay back Shimon. So because this is something that's provable, we're going to say, keep it with Shimon, right? So let's read it inside. So Hasa Milsa de la Vida le'igluye hi. Over there, it's not a scenario that can be proven one way or the other, and therefore we say, well, we have to, So what do we do? Rav Nachman says we go based on the one who has the chazaka of the property. However, Hacha Milsa de Avida le'igluye hi. But over here, right? Shimon says a 3-year mashkanta. Reuben says a 2-year mashkanta. We could bring witnesses to prove, right? Potentially we could bring witnesses to prove one way or the other. We are not going to have Bezdin schlep out twice, the first time to say, okay, Shimon, you have to pay back Reuven, and then Shimon brings witnesses that he's telling the truth, and then we say, okay, fine, Reuven, you have to pay back Shimon. We're not going to do that, and therefore we say, keep it where it is, keep it with Shimon. And if Reuven manages to bring witnesses to prove his case, okay, so then at that point we'll take it away from Shimon and give it to Reuven, and then that will be settled. Malve, this is an interesting scenario. Malve omer chomesh, love omer shalish. Okay, so another mashkanta desura. Shimon and Reuven $1,000. Reuven gave Shimon his field. Shimon's been eating from the field for 3 years. It's so funny. I moved to this side of the table so that the light wouldn't bother me. But it's funny, now there's just a little bit of light, which is driving me nuts. Al Kaponim, that's okay. It's much better than when the sun is straight up in my eyes. Al Kaponim. So another mashkanta desura. Shimon lends Reuven $1,000. Reuven gives his field to Shimon for a certain amount of time. And when this mashkanta, when the years of the mashkanta is up, the field goes back to Reuven, and the loan is considered paid. It's been 3 years. It's been 3 years now. And Reuven says, okay, 3 years are up. Shimon, time to give me back the field. Shimon says, wait, it's a 5-year mashkanta, not a 3-year mashkanta. So what's interesting about this scenario is, what happens when you see 3 years? You think, chazaka. Shimon, that son of a gun, already has a chazaka on the field. He's been eating from it for 3 years. Reuven now comes and says, okay, time to give it back to me. He says, no, I have it for another 2 years. For 5 years. So Malva, says the Gemara, Malva Omer Chomesh, Shimon says the mashkanta was for 5 years. Lova Omer Shalosh. Lova says no, it was a 3-year mashkanta. It's time to give it back. Right? Reuven says it's a 3-year mashkanta. Time to give it back. Omar Le, I see li shtarach. And Reuven says to Shimon, Nu Shimon, if it's a 5-year mashkanta, how about this? At the beginning, right, when I gave you my field, I wrote you a document that said, I, Reuven, am giving my field to Shimon to use. And of course, I would have written on the document how long it was for. So why don't we just look at the document and it'll be settled? You know what Shimon says? Oh, the document, chaval, I lost it. It's gone. Omer of Yehuda, so Yehuda says, Malve Neman. Shimon is taka believed to say that it's a 5-year mashkanta because Migo de Iboy Omar Likucha Ibiyadi, because since Shimon's already been eating from the field for 3 years and he has a chazaka on it now, technically he could have been a real shmendrik and said, this is my field. I bought it from you. I bought it from you 3 years ago. It's mine. The document, I lost the document. I don't have a document anymore, but I've been here for 3 years. I've been eating from the field. It's my field. It's mine. It's not yours. You're never getting it back. You sold it to me. But he didn't say that. He let Reuven off easy. He said, it's a 5-year mashkanta. So since he could have, if he was lying, so why not just go out of sof and say, this is my field. It's not yours. You're never getting it back. But he didn't do that. He said, yeah, you're going to get, it's a 5-year mashkanta. That you'll get it back in another 2 years. So because he could have, if he wanted to lie, he could have lied and said that he owns it, but he didn't do that, so therefore we trust him, that he's telling the truth and he's not lying. Right, so Migo de Iboy Omar Lekuchi Ibiyadi, since Shimon could have said, I bought it, I own it, you're never getting it back, but instead he said, it's just a 5-year mashkanta, so he's believed. Amalei Rav Papa Rav Ashi, says Rav Papa to Rav Ashi, Rav Zvid Rav Avira Lo Svira Lehu Had Rav Yehuda. Says Rav Papa to Rav Ashi that Rav Zvid and Rav Avira did not agree with Rav Yehuda. My time, how come they didn't agree? Because Hai Shtorit is super interesting, friends. I feel like this is going to come up in BavaMetzia. The third parak of BavaMetzia is called Cheskas Abatim, all about chazakas. I learned it a long time ago. That's about all I've learned of BavaMetzia. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll be interesting. Hopefully it'll be great. It's going to be great. My time I started came. Okay. Here's the thing, friends. Here is the thing. What's the deal with a chazaka? Why does a chazaka work? The reason why a chazaka works is because let's say Reuven is buying let's say Reuven is buying a field. Let's say Reuven sells his field to Shimon. That way we can just kind of keep, right? Because in this case we're saying Shimon's the one who has the shtar for the mashkanta. So let's keep it the same way. Shimon buys a field from Reuven. He buys it. Shimon buys a field from Reuven. Reuven writes a document and gives it to Shimon. It says, I, Reuven, have sold my field to you, Shimon. And that document proves that, right, that Shimon is the owner of the field. The question is, now what? Is Shimon now expected to hold on to this document forever and ever and ever and ever? And what? And like 30 years from now, Reuven's going to come to Shimon and he's going to say, Shimon, this is my field. Shimon's going to be, what do you mean? I bought it from you. Reuven's going to say, show me the document. It was 30 years ago. It got lost. So now what? So now Reuven loses the field because he doesn't have a document? So the Chachamim say, look, for 3 years, a person can be expected to hold on to a document, just in case Reuven shows up and says it's not yours, it's mine. For 3 years, Shimon can be expected to hold on to that document. After 3 years already, Reuven hasn't given him a hard time ever. And, after 3 years, it can get lost. So sometimes the assumption is, look, Shimon bought the field from Reuven. Shimon owns it now. He's been on it for 3 years. Reuven has never given him a hard time. All the neighbors know this is Shimon's field. He bought it from Reuven 3 years ago. He's been eating from it. He's been working from it. At that point, if this is a permanent sale, we can't expect that Shimon is going to that Shimon's never going to lose his document. It's bound to happen. It's destined to happen that somebody who buys the field eventually is going to lose the document. But so long as he's been on the field for at least 3 years, then that's enough to prove that he's the owner, and that's a chazakah. We could rely upon it that he is in fact the owner. But the thing is, that is by a sale, a permanent sale, where it's forever. And we say, yeah, we can't expect Shimon to hold on to that document forever. Like practically speaking, it's gonna get lost. People are gonna lose it. But this is not that. This mashkanta is not that. Okay, so Shimon is saying it's a 5-year mashkanta. Okay, this is something that in 5 years, it's saying that you have access to this property for 5 years, after which you give back the property and the loan is considered paid. So therefore, yes, we can expect Shimon, and do expect Shimon, to hold on to that document for 5 years. And if he loses it, well then, we may not trust him. So let's look at the Gemara now. Some of them are popular of Ashi, they don't agree with Rav Yehuda that Shimon could pull out the Chazaka card and let's say, well, Migo, if he was lying, then he would have just said that he owns it because of the Chazaka. No, the Chazaka doesn't work here. My time, how come they disagree with Rav Yehuda? Because this document for the mashkanta came to the Govaino Koi. Since it isn't forever and ever and ever, it is stating something that a collection of for 5 years. So and it's in order to be able to collect for a 5-year period, Mizayer Zoyer Bey. So we do expect him to be careful not to lose it during that time. And he himself is hiding the document from us. Because he figures that, well, if I just hide the document, I can just eat it for another 2 years. And we assume that he's being dishonest. And he's deliberately hiding the document, that really it is a 3-year mashkanta, but he's deliberately hiding it so that he can eat it for another 2 years. And therefore we don't trust him here. This is not a case of a sale where after 3 years there's a chazakah. There's a case of a collection for a loan, a payment for a loan. And this is an important document that we need him to hold on to. And if he says that we lost it, we don't trust him. And therefore, therefore we would not trust Shimon here. Says Ravina to Ravashi, so now, according to Rav Yehuda, who had said that technically Shimon could have said, well, I've been on this land for 3 years already, it's mine, but he didn't do that, right? So there's the migo. But Hamashkanta Desura the Kasve Hachi. But then, according to Rav Yehuda, I don't understand, how does Mashkanta Desura ever work? How do we ever have this scenario where he writes the Kasve Hachi b'mishlam shnai ilen, that after these number of years, Tepok Arado below Kesef, this land will go back to you and the loan will be considered repaid. Heicha de kavshe l'shtay mashkanta v'amel lekuchei biyadi hachinami de meimin. But I understand, according to you, Rav Yehuda, it sounds like Shimon technically after 3 years could just say, oh, by the way, it's mine now, I own it. So, heich v'chi mesakni rabbanon milsa de osi balidei pseida. How could the Rabbanon enact something that just seems so irresponsible? Right, according to Rav Yehuda, that a chazaka even applies to a mashkanta desura, then how could the Rabbanon have said that Shimon can lend $1,000 to Reuven, Reuven gives him his field for 5 years, and then after 3 years, Shimon can just claim, oh, it's mine, I bought it from you 3 years ago, I lost the shtar, but I have a chazaka, it's mine. It just seems so irresponsible. It seems so easy to exploit. So Omar Le, so Ravashi responds to Avina, Hosam takinu le Rabbanon dimari ara yoiv taska v'chari karya. Well, that's a good question, but by the Mashkanta Desura, what they do is, they do certain things to avoid that, to prevent that. For example, Reuven would still continue paying taxes on the field. So, taxes is like whoever pays taxes is the one who owns the field. So clearly Shimon doesn't own the field. Reuven also would build ditches around the field, but he would still be doing things to make it clear that he's the owner and Shimon is just eating the payros. What if it's a land that he, for whatever reason, doesn't have to pay tax for and doesn't need to build ditches for? Then how does he prove that it's his? So Rashi says, well, still, Reuven needs to, make it clear to everybody, to the neighbors, to everybody, that Shimon is only temporarily on this land. I am still the owner of this land. Lo imchamai, what if he didn't do that? Well, then he was just being irresponsible. He's giving his land to Shimon for 10 years or whatever. Yeah, he's going to have to make sure that that he keeps ownership of it. If he just ignores it for 10 years while Shimon's been on it for 10 years, working it and everything, then yeah, he's, if he gets to a point where Shimon claims a chazaka and Reuven has absolutely no way to prove it and hasn't done anything to, prevent Shimon from being able to make such a claim, well, then he's being very irresponsible and it's his own fault. Oris omer lemechza yoradti uvalabayis omer lishlish horadtiv. We have a machlokes between a sharecropper and a landowner. The sharecropper says, our arrangement is that I get half of the yield. The balabayis says, no, the arrangement is that you get 1/3 of the yield. Minemon, who's believed? Rav Yehuda Omer says, Rav Yehuda balabayis nemon. Let's call them Reuven and Shimon. Reuven is the sharecropper, Shimon is the balabayis. Shimon is believed that Reuven only gets 1/3. Rav Nachman Omar, Hakol k'minhag hamadina. Rav Nachman says, it's whatever the minhag is. If the minhag is that the sharecropper gets half, so the sharecropper gets half. The minhag is that the sharecropper gets 1/3, the sharecropper gets 1/3. So Ramina lo plige, and the assumption is initially that actually Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman don't disagree, i.e., they agree. Okay, so explain. Why would Rav Yehuda say that we believe Shimon, that Reuven only gets 1/3? The reason why Rav Yehuda said that we believe the balabayis, that Reuven only gets 1/3, is because it was in a place where the minhag is that the sharecropper gets 1/3. If the minhag would have been that he gets half, so then he would get half. Amlu Rav Mari bra devas Shmuel. Rav Mari brother Shmuel says to them, that Abai said, Afilu ba'asu d'shakalurisa palga plige Rav Yehuda. No, Rav Yehuda would say that no, still we would believe the balabayis that Reuven would only get 1/3, even in a place where the minhag was for a half. Plige Rav Yehuda Amar says Rav Yehuda balabayis nemon. Again, Rav Yehuda is saying migo, that the balabais is believed because if Shimon, the balabais, was being dishonest, he would have said, actually, Reuven isn't even a sharecropper, by the way. He's not, so he doesn't actually have the rights to any percentage of the property. He's actually just a hired worker, and I just have to pay him a salary, but he actually doesn't have any rights to any percentage of the property. So if he was being dishonest, he would have said that he's not actually a sharecropper. So since he says no, he is a sharecropper, but the agreement was for 1/3, so we believe him, because if he was lying, he would have said he's not even a sharecropper. Yisomim omrim onu ishbachnu v'alchov omer avichem ishbiach al mi lehavi raya. Okay, he's talking about a scenario where Shimon lent Reuven $1,000. Reuven then died. So now Shimon wants to collect from the property of the estate. Okay, fine. And the thing is, the orphans, right, the children say, we've actually improved the land. And therefore, while you can collect from the land, you can't collect from the improvements that we have made to the land. To which Shimon says, those improvements, your father made those improvements. And I can collect from them. Who do we believe? Who has to bring the proof? Do the orphans have to bring the proof that they, in fact, improved it? Or does Shimon have to bring proof that Reuven really improved it while he was alive? So Sav Reb Chanina Lemeimar, Reb Chanina thought to say, Ara bechezkas yasme kaima. Well, the orphans currently have the land, and therefore they have the chazaka on it, and therefore v'al bal chov la'aviraya, and therefore if Shimon wants to collect from the entire land, well then he is going to have to bring the proof that Reuven's the one who made the improvements. But then a certain elder said to Reb Chanina, Hachi Amar Reb Yochanan says, Ali Yisomim Lahaviraya, that nisht fakert, it's the orphans who have to bring the proof that they were the ones who made the improvement. My time I'll come. Ara kevan diligovaina kaima kiman de gabya damya v'ali yisom lahaviraya. Because this land is gone. Shimon's going to collect from the land. That's undisputed. Shimon has a right to collect from this land. The question is who made the improvements to the land. If Reuven made the improvements, then Shimon can collect even from the improvements. If the Yisomim made the improvements, then Shimon cannot collect from the improvements. The land itself, though, nobody doubts. Nobody, argues. Nobody says that the land, regarding the land itself, Shimon can obviously collect from. It's just all about the improvement. So the land is gone. Right? Clearly, it's obvious. The Yisomim are going to lose that land. The question is just what happens to the Shevach. So because this land is certainly going to be collected and is going to Shimon, so it's considered like it's been already collected. And therefore, actually, it's upon the Yisomim to prove that they made the improvements and that Shimon doesn't have the right to them. So now the burden of proof is on the Yisomim. So again, right? So Rabbi Yochanan says, "Ala Yisomim la viraya." The Yisomim have to bring the proof. My time will come. Ira came to the Govaina Kaima, since this land is going to be collected. That's for sure. Kiman de Gabidam, it's considered like it's already collected. And that Shimon has it, and Shimon has the chazaka, and therefore the Yisomim are the ones who are going to have to bring the proof. Amar Abai says, Abai, Afono Nami Tanino. We have a Mishnah like this, a Mishnah in BavaMetzia, that we're going to learn in about a month. That apparently you're not allowed to plant a tree within 50 amas of a city. So that tree is going to get cut down. If there's a tree within 50 amas of a city, it gets cut down. That's what happened. The question is, if the tree was planted there before the city, so then the owner of the tree can get paid back. If it was planted after the city was already there, then the planter of the tree cannot get paid back. If we are uncertain, well, then that's what we're about to talk about. So let's see. So Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah about BavaMetzia. Sofik zek kodem v'sofik zek kodem. If we're not sure if the city came first or if the tree came first, code says okay. So you cut it down because either no matter what you're cutting it down. Ve'eno no saying domim, and he doesn't get paid. Okay, he doesn't get paid. Fine. Okay. So Alma. So we see Kevan del Mikatze, it's Kaima. So we see that since this tree, either way, is going to get cut down, Amina Le, we say to him, Aisi Raya Ushkol, the burden of proof is on you to, if you want to, if you want to get paid back, so then bring a proof that it was planted first. So Achanamis here also, Ashtar came to the Gobaina Kaima. Since this land is going to be collected from Shimon, that's for sure. So Kamandagabi Dam, it's considered like it's already been collected by Yisom Laviraya, and therefore it's on the Yisomim to bring a proof that they in fact made the improvements. Aisu Yasme Raya Deinu Ashbichu. So now, okay, fine. So the Yisomim say fine. That we have no problem with that. We could do that. After all, we're telling the truth. We made the improvements to the land. We'll prove it, and they prove it. They made the improvements to the land. Fine. So now Shimon has no right to them. He has to pay them for the improvements. So does he pay them with cash, or does he give them back property? So Reb Chanina Lemeimar, Reb Chanina thought to say, Kisalkinon Kim salkinon lehu, be'ar misalkinon lehu. So we give them back some of that land for their, to be paid, for the value of their improvements. Viloi, but that's not the case. B'demei misalkinon lehu. No. Shimon keeps all of the land, improvements and all, and he pays them for the value of the improvements. Midur Rav Nachman, Damar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, says Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, Shlosha Shamin Loim Es HaShevach Umaylan also B'dam, that there are 3 scenarios where we evaluate the value of the improvement and we give it to them in cash, in money. These are them B'chor Lepashit. So if you have let's say you have somebody passed away, he has 2 sons, a firstborn who gets pishnayim, twice as much, and another son. So let's say you had a property that was worth $150. So the firstborn would get 100, and the secondborn would get 50, right? The firstborn gets twice as much as the other one. 150 divided into 150. What if they improved the property and now it's worth 300, twice as much? The thing is, the firstborn only has the right to pishnayim for, or let's say this, he doesn't have a right to pishnayim for improvements, only for what it was at the time of the death, for the principal amount. But however, he collected $200 out of the $300 worth of property, but really, for the improvements of $150, he was really only had the rights to 75 of it, not 100 of it. So really, in total, he should have gotten, 175, but instead he got 200. So we say he's got to give $25 to his brother. So we're saying that is paid with money, not with property. In our case right now as well, Shimon, the Baal Chov, paying the Yisomim, meaning the Baal Chov collects the property and he pays the Yisomim with money, not with property. And finally, Uval Chov lilikuchis. And finally, a Baal Chov to likuchis, right? So let's say, let's keep, I want to keep Shimon as the Baal Chov. Okay, so let's say Shimon and Reuven. Reuven bought a field from somebody. Reuven bought a field, from Levi, alright? Reuven bought a field from Levi. Shimon then goes to Reuven and says, wait, Reuven, sorry, but I had lent money to Levi, he didn't pay me back, that land was mishubad, I'm taking your land. So, if that land has shevach, so Shimon pays Reuven the shevach in money, not in property. One second. So this was quoted Rav Nachman's name of Shmuel. So does that mean that Shmuel holds that a Baal Chov, Shimon in this case, when he collects property from the Lekuchis, Reuven, he needs to pay Reuven for the shvach? Reuven, when he had the field, he improved it, he planted things, he improved it. Shimon needs to pay Reuven for that. But does he hold that that Shimon is responsible to pay Reuven for the improvements that Reuven had made to the property? But Shmuel said, Baal Chov goveh shevach, that Shimon collects the property, including the shevach. Well, maybe you'll say, well, it depends. When we say that Shimon does pay Reuven for the shevach, it's when it's shevach hamagil ksefayim. Reuven had grown wheat, and the wheat is mamish ready to be harvested. Okay, so in that case, Shimon would pay Reuven for that. But if it was other improvements, I don't know, maybe fertilize the land, I don't know, whatever it is, there's other improvements, Shimon would not be responsible to pay Reuven for that. But we know that that's simply not the case. That in fact, Shmuel allows Shimon to collect the property, including the shevach, even when it's shevach hamigel ksefayim. Lo kasha o Demasik Bekashir Ara Vishvacha Adlo Masik Bekashir Ara Vishvacha. Very practical answer. That, well, it simply depends how much Shimon had lent Levi. If the loan was equal to the value of the property and the shevach, well, then he can collect all of it as repayment for his loan. But if the property is more expensive than the amount of the loan, well, then Shimon, when he takes the property, he needs to pay Reuben for the shevach. And when the amount of the loan is less than the amount of the property, and therefore Shimon is paying Reuben for the shevach. Shimon pays Reuven money, not land. So we've seen this before. This makes sense. Well, this makes sense, right? There's a question of when Shimon comes to Reuven and says, Reuven, sorry, but I need to take that land. Levi defaulted on the loan that I gave him. So what if Reuven says, wait, Shimon, can't we settle this with money? Like, I bought this land, I want this land, I've worked this land, I've improved this land, I have money, I want to keep the land, can't I just give you money? So according to the opinion, he says, no, you can't just give him money. The field must be relinquished to Shimon. So then I get it. I get why Shimon, when he has to pay the payers to Reuven, the shevach to Reuven, he pays with money. He doesn't give land to Reuven because Reuven has no connection to that land. Shimon simply takes it away from him. Right, so again, Omar, that if Reuven had money, he wouldn't be able to say to Shimon, can't I just pay you money? Shapir, then I understand why Shimon pays Reuven with money and Reuven doesn't get paid with land, because the land is gone. Right? Reuven doesn't get paid with land, the land is gone. But according to the opinion who says that if Reuven does have money, he could say to Shimon, wait, can't we settle this with money? I'd rather give you money than relinquish the field. So Besider, that would work. Now in this case, it didn't happen because Reuven didn't have money. So because he didn't have money, so he had to unfortunately relinquish the field to Shimon. But let Reuven say to Shimon, if I had the money, I would have just given you money and said, don't take any of my land. But look, the fact of the matter is I don't have money. And yes, I'm forced to give you the land. But the amount of your loan is less than the value of the land. You're going to pay me for the shevach. So I'd rather that you not give me money. I'd rather get land. After all, I am entitled to the land. If I had money, I could have just given you that and kept the land. I didn't, and therefore I had to relinquish the land. But I gave you more land than you deserved, so give me back land rather than money. So Havli Griva the Aro Ba'aroi Shir Shvachoy. At least give me back my property, for equivalent to the improvements. So the reason why, it's a good point, but the reason why that doesn't work in this case, and why Shimon would give money rather than land, because Levi had told Shimon that this land in particular, if I default, goes to you. And therefore he says that this land, your payment is specifically coming from this land, and therefore Shimon has the rights to land, Reuven doesn't, and Shimon just pays Reuven with money. That was Kuf Yud of Masechet BavaMetzia. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.